the U.S. and Israel launch military strikes, President Trump declares the supreme leader of Iran is dead.
Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime.
This may be a very significant symbolic and operational blow, but it is not the end of the operation, at least as described by President Trump.
Iran has launched a counterattack on U.S. bases across the Middle East.
The UAE, Kuwait is on alert. Qatar, missiles coming in and missiles being intercepted. There's another one.
The future of the Middle East as America enters into war with Iran. Good evening. The dictator is dead. The Israelis said it, President Trump said it, and now Iranian state television is confirming it. After more than 30 years ruling Iran as a brutal theocracy, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is no more. That is the biggest news in a day that began with a historic surprise. At around 10 a.m. local time in Iran, in the holy month of Ramadan, the U.S. and Israel launched a large-scale joint attack. The first signs, those plumes of smoke over Tehran. And then about 90 minutes later, President Trump announced a massive and ongoing combat operation aimed at toppling the regime there. He also laid out the history, the revolution 47 years ago that brought the first Ayatollah to power, replacing a secular society, the kind of place where women dressed and dreamed as they wished, with a system of strict religious theocracy. The president noted the decades of mayhem as well, the murder of service members in Beirut, the bombing of the USS Cole, and the arming of proxies that have, as the president put it, soaked the earth with blood and guts. But what now? How wide could this go? And what happens when the shooting ends? Many Iranians are celebrating today's attack, but the regime still stands, announcing a 40-day period of mourning for the late supreme leader. And with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard still firing rockets at Israel, at other American allies, and at U.S. bases throughout the region, vowing in just the past hour, in fact, that, quote, the most ferocious offensive operation in the history of the Iranian armed forces will begin in a few moments. The U.S. military buildup in the region is already the largest in a generation. And President Trump, in a post not long ago, promised that, quote, heavy and pinpoint bombing will continue, quote, uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary. But he is also facing political opposition at home, Democrats characterizing this as an illegal war of choice that endangers U.S. troops and could draw the U.S. into a wider war. And so we are at a crossroads tonight, and we have it all covered for you. A team of reporters this hour, including Robert Costa, who spoke with President Trump just a short time ago. What the president told him. But first, Charlie D'Agata in Tel Aviv for us tonight. A long day into the night. Charlie, good evening.
Good evening to you, Tony. Good morning from here. It's almost dawn here. It has been a noisy night here in Tel Aviv. There's been air raid sirens, explosions, mostly intercepting incoming missiles. We actually have seen, there are no commercial flights in and out of this area, as you well know. We've seen a lot of military aircraft in the past half hour or so, at least 6 of them going by here. But this entire region is bracing for what day 2 brings. I can tell you that Israel's state of emergency is still in effect. They're warning residents to stay off the streets, stay close to shelters. As I said, we've had multiple air raid sirens, even in the past couple hours or so through the night. Schools and businesses are shut. And, you know, this is a sort of Monday for them. So schools and businesses would be in session. Israel is on edge, not just here, but other countries across the Middle East. They're bracing for more attacks to come because, as you've seen, Iranians have tried to attack U.S. bases, very well defended in places like Al Udeid, and the base, in Bahrain, but this is a better idea of what we were covering yesterday. The Israeli military announced a new wave of attacks against Iran's air defenses and ballistic missiles this morning. U.S. officials tell CBS News American forces are taking part again, too, in what the U.S. military has called Operation Epic Fury, releasing this footage showing F-35 stealth fighter jets, F-18s, cruise missiles launched from one of a dozen U.S. Navy destroyers from an undisclosed location. Intelligence and military officials tell CBS News around 40 Iranian officials were killed, along with the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in a series of strikes. Iran's military forces had already launched retaliatory strikes earlier in the day when President Trump posted a speech outlining the main objective, regime change, urging Iranian citizens to rise up.
I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take.
And while Iran's supreme leader may be dead, its military continues to fight on. And President Trump has vowed to keep up the intensity, too. U.S. forces are already following those orders.
Charlie D'Agata for us live from Tel Aviv tonight. Charlie, thank you very much. This operation, which the Pentagon is calling Epic Fury, is also epically complex and full of risk. For more on what goes into an operation like this, let's bring in retired Admiral Mark Montgomery, who served 32 years in the Navy as a nuclear-trained surface warfare officer. He's now at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. Also here is CBS News contributor and Marine Corps veteran Elliot Ackerman. Admiral, I'd like to begin with you. Thank you very much for joining us here. You were a strike group, carrier group planner at one point. You know more than anyone on this channel right now about what would into a strike like this. Take us through what you saw, what stood out.
You know, I thought it was a good, comprehensive first day, and you can obviously see that the number one target here is senior leadership, both of the Iranian, the Supreme Leader, but also of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. I think what went alongside this was what's called suppression of enemy air defense. So we simultaneously would have attacked the remaining air defense systems that weren't destroyed by Israel in the 12-day war last year. And this is all a precursor for follow-on strikes over the next, I would suggest, probably 2 weeks, where we go after the other targets that didn't need the surprise that the targeting of the Iranian leadership did. So you would clearly hit them on day one while they were loose with their security, as loose as they would be with their security, and where you could get as many as possible. And while getting the Supreme Leader was very important, you can also see they made some serious inroads on other IRGC leadership and military leadership.
Admiral, you've seen the response from Iran. President Trump said he expected it to be double. That might be bluster. What do you make of it?
You know, I think this is what you get in an initial response. I think we'll see more over the next few days. So there'll now be a race between us treading or destroying their ability to launch weapons at Israel and at U.S. forces stationed throughout the Middle East, and the Iranian ability to get those weapons out, cleared, and get a shot off. So I suspect the next few days worth of strikes will be heavily focused on current Iranian ballistic and cruise missiles and on their drone launch facilities to ensure that these get knocked out. But this was a decent response. I was surprised that the shot got into our NAV Center, Naval Forces Central Command headquarters in Bahrain. But also, we should assume that the adversary will be able to impose some cost on us in retaliation.
Elliot, let's bring you into this. Are you skeptical of the wisdom of this operation?
I think it all depends on the outcome. You know, this is obviously a very complex operation. We are seeing basically, you know, move one moving into move two of what's going to be a 40-move game. So there's a lot of risk inherent with this, as there is any time you embark upon a path of war. And I think we're just going to have to watch very closely in the days, weeks, and perhaps months ahead.
Do you believe this will be an air-only campaign, or if the goal is truly regime change, it will require boots on the ground?
I think that's an area where the Trump administration has a lot of control, and I think they've signaled very clearly that boots on the ground is a bridge too far for them. I think what this campaign is going to rely on quite significantly, and the president alluded to it in his comments, is going to be the actions of the Iranian people. This air campaign, the boots on the ground for this air campaign, is eventually going to be Iranian civil society coming out in the streets and demanding a change of regime. And we haven't seen that yet, but that's what I'm going to be watching for in the days and weeks ahead.
Admiral, back to you on this. You mentioned a 2-week campaign. Are you imagining that as air only?
I am, and I agree with Elliot. I mean, the 2 times that we've successfully used U.S. air-only campaigns to change governments, Libya in 2011 and Kosovo in 1999, there was large armed insurgent groups that we were enabling during those attacks. What we have right now are large groups of activists and disaffected citizens, not large armed groups. So we'll have to see what happens in this. The 2-week campaign I envision would be one that knocks down their remaining ballistic missile, both their systems, but also I would hit their factories. In the second week, I would hit their production capabilities of both drones and ballistic missiles. And then if we haven't in fact obliterated the nuclear program, then I would restrike the nuclear program elements that still remain.
Elliot, you mentioned the Iranian civil society as the next step in all of this, but one never knows when you knock down a leader what grows in its place. Are you confident that what comes next will be better than what was?
I think what we'll potentially have is a power vacuum, and that creates a whole host of challenges. I mean, is there a scenario in which Iranian civil society rises up and demands a peaceful, a democratic transition of power? I mean, sure, that's something we can imagine. But can we also imagine where Iranian civil society fractures, where you still have regime hardliners who break off, and you see Iran entering into a period of internal instability, leading up into civil war and a Syria-like outcome? That's also not outside the realm of possibility and would be disastrous not only for the people of Iran, but create incredible instability in the region. All of this is in play right now, and I think the United States, because this is an air-only campaign, we will only have the ability to affect so much in the weeks and months going forward.
Admiral, in our final 30 seconds here, I'm curious, how long can these strike groups float off the coast in the region?
Strike groups, especially when you're in combat like this, you do need some breaks, but the reality is they can maintain station for 3 to 6 months. Now, the Ford is in a unique condition, the aircraft carrier strike group in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's already been on deployment for 10.5 months. It's about to break the record for longest post-Vietnam deployment. So that one may need to be replaced, but the Lincoln can stay on station for 3 to 6 months easily.
All right, appreciate the expertise. Admiral Mark Montgomery and Elliot Ackerman, thank you both. In announcing today's joint strike on Iran, the president laid out his rationale for major combat operations, promising to target the regime's weapons and, quote, annihilate their navy.
Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. But
let's stay on this question of timing, the timing of this strike. Nuclear negotiations were still technically underway, set to resume in person on Monday, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio had been scheduled to travel to the region. So what changed, or was all of that a diversion? Let's go to CBS senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang, who's been working the phones tonight. Weijia, what are you hearing?
But Tony, senior administration officials tell CBS News that while the long-term concern is Iran's nuclear ambitions, they believe there was an immediate threat from missiles, that Iran was preparing to potentially launch a preemptive attack as President Trump weighed the possibility of military action during those negotiations, adding that if Trump had waited, the amount of American casualties and damage would have been substantially higher. President Trump monitored the strikes from his Florida resort with top aides and announced them to the world on social media at 2:30 in the morning.
The United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America.
Just hours earlier, Trump attended a formal event.
We got to go work. Oh, my God. I got to go to work. And indicated negotiations to find a diplomatic solution with Iran were not going well. I'm not happy with the fact that they're not willing to give us what we have to have. Trump wanted Iran to fully dismantle its nuclear program, stop enriching uranium, and limit its ballistic missile program. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Iran claims it has not enriched uranium since June, when the U.S. attacked 3 of its nuclear facilities. But it also blocked international inspectors from confirming. Today, Trump worked the phones with world leaders, including several from the Middle East. As they wait to see the extent of Iran's response, Trump sought to set sober expectations. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
He has started a war, and it has eerie similarities to the way Iraq began.
Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton served 4 tours in Iraq. He is among the Democrats who have criticized Trump for not seeking congressional approval before attacking Iran.
You have to obey the Constitution, and that means going before Congress and asking Congress to decide, is it worth putting young American lives on the line with great risk to achieve these goals?
Democrats plan to force a vote on a bipartisan bill that would require President Trump to seek congressional authorization to use military force in Iran, but it would likely fail with near unanimous Republican opposition. And even if it did pass, Trump could veto it. As for this hour tonight, President Trump continues to closely monitor the situation from Florida alongside members of his national security team. He also attended a GOP fundraiser tonight at his Florida resort. His press secretary says the Republican Party is, quote, more important than ever. Tony.
All right, Weisha, thank you very much. Chief Washington analyst Robert Costa spoke with President Trump by phone this evening, and he joins us now. Robert, good evening. What did the president tell you?
Good to be with you, Tony. When I spoke to President Trump just before he went to that GOP fundraiser by phone, he expressed great confidence in the military strikes so far. He notably said he's monitoring the situation, and he's somewhat surprised that the retaliatory response from Iran has been less than expected by the United States and its allies, though, of course, it's a fluid situation. And I asked him, Tony, what's next? What are you trying to look for here? Is a diplomatic solution possible in this crisis? And he said yes, he believes the strikes could bring Iran closer to a diplomatic solution that he believes is right for the region, right for the United States, because they're, quote, getting beat up so badly. I said, in the wake of the killing of the Ayatollah, who's in charge of Iran now? He says he has been briefed about all of the leadership shakeups inside Iran. He would not say who exactly he believes is running the country right now, but he says, I know exactly who is, I just won't tell you. There are some good candidates, he says, who could lead Iran in the weeks moving forward should discussions pick up. And I also asked him, I said, what about Congress? We've seen some of the Democratic response. We just spoke to the congressman from Massachusetts, and he said, look, I'm always willing to work with Congress, but on this front, in so many fronts, Tony, he is willing to use his executive power, as he told me, to take out what he perceives to be threats to the United States.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to broaden our conversation now and bring in Congressman Rick Crawford, an Army veteran from a military family now representing Arkansas's 1st District. He's also chair of the House Intelligence Committee, making him a member of the so-called Gang of Eight. That's a group of congressional leaders brought in on high-level classified briefings from the executive branch. Representative Crawford, thank you again for joining us. Because you are a member of the Gang of Eight, you are one of the few Americans who had advance notice of this strike this morning. What can you tell us about why now, why the timing was right, and what the goals are?
Well, I think there are 3 goals to be addressed here. We've heard a lot of analysts talk about it. One is the nuclear capability that they continue to engage in. The other is their ballistic missile production and deployment. And the third one was the regime change piece that is we're seeing, these organic uprisings in Iran. And we're seeing the regime had killed upwards of 30,000 of their own people as a result. So There were some compelling reasons here, but I would argue that, the notion of starting a war with Iran, I don't think that people realize we've been at war with Iran since 1979. So President Trump is not starting a war, he's finishing one.
One of the questions Democrats have raised is whether the president should have gone to Congress for approval. Now, Congress, of course, hasn't declared war formally since World War II. But there is the question of whether this is really a preemptive strike or merely a preventative one. Was there an imminent threat from Iran?
I'm not sure that there's much of a difference between a preventive or a preemptive strike in this context. I think what we're seeing here was there was a sufficient threat and a 47-year history that we had reached a point at which we are not going to take anymore. And I think President Trump recognized that this was an opportunity that the timing was perfect and it was surgically precise. And the conditions on the ground are such that the Iranian people needed assistance so they can affect their own self-determination and really take matters into their own hands. Now, regime change is a byproduct of that. I welcome it, quite frankly. And if you've seen the footage from around the world, not only in Iran, but in the diaspora communities here in the United States and elsewhere in the world, they welcome that change as well.
What's next, Congressman, to the best of our knowledge?
Well, you had some really good analysis in a previous segment with the Admiral and Elliot Ackerman. I think laid out a pretty extensive analysis of what we can expect. You'll continue to see airstrikes, and it'll be very precise, targeting areas of things like the southern portion, what they call the southern ballistic missile belt there in the southern region of Iran, the production so that we can pretty much curtail their magazine depth. It's going to take a little bit of patience because most of those ballistic missile sites are mobile. So it will take a little bit of time, but the president has indicated that. But what we see are the conditions on the ground are ripe for organic regime change. And, we pray for the Iranian people to be able to organize and engage in self-determination.
Congressman, it's been pointed out that this is the largest buildup of U.S. forces in the Middle East since the start of the Iraq War in 2003. For many Americans, they wake up today and they wonder, is this a here we go again moment? To those people, including, I'm sure, some of your own voters and voters for President Trump, what do you say to calm the nerves?
Well, I think we have to take a look back at the history here with this particular country. And myself, I actually was part of an engagement that involved Iran back in the 80s. And then there was, since 1983, the attack on the Marine barracks in Lebanon. And, of course, go back to 1979, when they took American hostages from the embassy in Tehran. There's just a laundry list of abuses of the United States and our allies and the engagement and funding of terrorism for 47 years. And this is, I would liken this moment in history to almost equal to bringing down the Berlin Wall. The job's not finished yet, but that is the historic arc that we're seeing play out in front of us here, in that we're doing something that is actually beneficial to the entire world, particularly the Gulf region there. And I think that our allies recognize that. I think Iran made some really strategic mistakes by attacking their neighbors in the region, unprovoked attacks against Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. That was not a good move, and it basically cemented the relationship with the United States.
Congressman, this is not the first time that President Trump has used military action against Iran while technically diplomacy was still afoot. Other times he has done so as well. And it raises the question, I heard it posed today, I'll pose it to you. Is America now a country where instead of the military being a last resort, the military is more like a first resort?
I think the president has engaged in an earnest diplomatic outreach to Iran when other countries didn't, and when other regimes didn't. For example, the Obama administration didn't engage directly with Iran. This was, the JCPOA was engaged, through intermediaries, and we saw the result of that. This is the president doing what he said he would do. He wants to make peace, and in fact, we've seen him make peace with other engagements around the world. This is no different. He makes the offer to go to the table with the Iranians and you and I weren't in the room, but what I did hear from folks who were in the room was a complete level of belligerence and arrogance that they absolutely refused to even consider those three key points that we've made tonight with regard to what those negotiations would entail. So that's an intractable position. And, all the goodwill in the world on the part of Donald Trump may not have been enough. They simply were not serious about engaging in a diplomatic solution.
All right. Congressman Rick Crawford of Arkansas's 1st District. Thank you very much, Congressman.
You bet. Thank you.
Next, the big questions right now. How long does this continue? How wide does it go? And what happens when it all ends? We'll take a look at the big picture and the political upheaval in the Middle East. We are back with a CBS News live special, War with Iran, and we start with side-by-side satellite imagery. You can see the before and after versions showcasing the catastrophic damage at the Ayatollah's compound in Tehran. You can see that after the strikes, the buildings are decimated. There's debris everywhere, smoke rising from the ashes. With the U.S. and Israel launching this war with Iran, this could be one of the most consequential days for the Middle East in generations. To put it all into context, let's bring in analyst and author Douglas Murray, plus Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett. Major, wait right there. I'm going to start with Douglas here on set. There's reporting from the Wall Street Journal tonight that Israel has managed to hack a popular Iranian prayer app, and it is sending messages telling members of the Revolutionary Guard to leave and liberate the country. What do you make of that?
First of all, it's a tactic that the Israelis have used elsewhere. They've used it in Gaza. They've used it against Hezbollah in Lebanon. So it's a familiar tactic. The message itself is simply reiterating what President Trump said in his late night message, which is to request that the Revolutionary Guards, the Basij and others put down their weapons. And in Trump's language, he said last night, now is the time to do that. Otherwise, there's another route further down the road.
So let's talk about the otherwise. What are the implications in the days, weeks, or longer ahead for America, Iran, the world?
Well, the first thing is, of course, you mentioned at the beginning how historic this is. Since 1979, the Iranian revolutionary government has, first of all, been repressing, of course, the Iranian people. It's been colonizing the entire region. It's been colonizing Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. And, of course, it's been the world's foremost sponsor of terror. So the fact that that regime seems to have been certainly decapitated and seems now to be tottering means, first of all, that we will very likely see a very different Middle East. But there's a secondary thing, which is, of course, and President Trump did refer to this a bit in his remarks, perhaps not enough in my view, was that don't forget that the terrorism that this regime has been spreading has not been limited to the Middle East. The regime spread terror to South America. It's tried to carry out assassinations here in New York of dissidents. It tried only a couple of years ago to kill a former American Secretary of State and a former National Security Advisor in Washington, D.C. So the fact that that foremost sponsor of terror is now seemingly on its last legs is something that's going to have huge implications way beyond the Middle East.
All of what you said has been true, though, for a while now. So why right now? Was it just the moment presented itself?
It seems to me that the moment presented itself. If you consider the difference between what's happened in the last 24 hours and what happened last summer it was very clear that in the 12-day war, that decapitation of the regime, specifically the targeting of the Ayatollah, was not on the table. That seemed to be the one thing that was absolutely not on the table. Taking out the nuclear sites was the main objective then, but not regime decapitation. Something has changed in the last year. Possibly it's simply President Trump's realization of the intractable nature of the Iranian revolutionary government in negotiations. They have strung on negotiating team after negotiating team from the West, from the international community for decades on every one of these issues.
Douglas, thank you very much. Major Garrett, I want to bring you into this conversation. The president likes to describe himself as the president of peace. He ran a campaign of no more wars in the Middle East. And then from the perspective here of someone in his own coalition, this looks like a new war. What do you make of it?
Yes, but there are times, Tony, when we make the observation that President Trump is so different than all of his predecessors and operates differently and doesn't necessarily adhere to the conventions of the presidency as conducted by presidents before him. In this one respect, there is a constant. To pick up on the point just made, since 1979, every American president has to one extent or another been frustrated, bedeviled, deterred, and in some cases haunted by the Islamic regime in Iran and its use of terror cell networks and proxies, not just in the Middle East, Europe, South America, even Asia. Every American president has had to deal with this. Carter, Reagan, Bush 1, and Clinton all dealt with not only the Iranian Revolution in 1979, but its expansion of use of terror throughout the region. And then it became a much bigger problem after 9/11, the global war on terror, then its nuclear ambitions. That was Bush 2, that was Trump, Obama, Trump again. Biden, all of them have been dealing with this. So that's one constant thread through the American presidency from 1979 to now. And it's at that point that I believe President Trump is saying not only is the time now, but Iran and its regime and its proxies have never been weaker. So when they are weak, it's time to strike. Not that they present this particularly malevolent new threat, but it may be time now to deal with that long-running threat from a position of, if not maximum advantage, near maximum advantage.
But, Major, we have midterm elections coming up. The president does need to have a coalition in Congress. This is difficult for them to explain to people. The polling is not in favor of a unilateral strike without approval from Congress. How does this play?
Well, let's go right to our polling data, Tony, on that very point. Our polling unit talked to Americans before the President's State of the Union address, asked one question. Has the Trump administration clearly explained the U.S. position on military action against Iran? 72% told us the answer to that question was no. Only 28% believed the administration had clearly explained what was about to happen or what it was contemplating. Now let's go after the State of the Union address. We asked some other questions. How should the United States approach Iran's current leadership? Let's go to the lowest rated answer, 18%. Remove them from power with force. Then next, 22%. Do not get involved, 22%. Pressure them with sanctions, 38%. Negotiate with them through diplomacy. We also asked, does Trump need approval from Congress for military action? 74%, Tony, said, yes, he does. That's clearly not happening. One last question. U.S. military action against Iran to stop them from making a nuclear weapon. How did that come out? 51% would favor, 49% would oppose. Very closely divided on those central questions. Tony?
All right, Major, thank you very much. Douglas, while I have you here, I think of Rick Crawford, the congressman, his first district there in Arkansas, the people sitting there tonight and all over the country asking themselves, what does this have to do with my life? How does it make my interest better?
Well, a huge amount is simply going to depend on the success or otherwise of this operation. If you look at the polling data from the operation in Venezuela the other week, the initial response among floating voters was pretty negative about it. Once it turned out that, an extraordinary operation, highly successful, Maduro seized and brought to New York, those numbers of approval went up hugely. But there's a caveat to that, and any Republican you speak to and anyone in the administration you speak to, as you know, knows this, which is none of these issues are actually midterm issues. It's the economy, it's cost of living that are midterm issues. But nevertheless, as was just mentioned, this issue of the Iranian revolutionary government is something that, as several people this hour have said, has bedeviled not just the Middle East, but America for 47 years now. We have been strung along in the West on nuclear issues, on terrorism issues, and much more. All of this time, clearly there was a moment that was seen that could be seized. Donald Trump seized it, and if it's successful, I'll imagine this success will have an awful lot of people claiming a bit of it.
Douglas Murray, thank you very much. Major Garrett, thank you as well to you. Ahead, the risks here at home, cities across the U.S. on high alert, the concerns of what could happen next. Our coverage of the war with Iran continues after a quick break. Welcome back to a CBS News live special, War with Iran, and with the Islamic Republic tonight promising a ferocious response to strikes by the U.S. and Israel. Let's turn back now to the homeland and concerns here over whether Iran has so-called sleeper cells preparing to retaliate. CBS correspondent Jerika Duncan has been looking into security precautions here at home.
Tonight, federal law enforcement officials are warning of a heightened security threat in the U.S. following those deadly strikes in Iran. Security has been increased in dozens of cities across the country. Hundreds today marched near the White House. And during this protest in New York City, drones and helicopters monitored the scene from above as demonstrators called for an end to the strikes.
It's not the United States' responsibility to conduct regime change abroad. If we want to really focus on human rights and regime change, we should focus on it here.
We spoke with NYPD Counterterrorism Deputy Commissioner Rebecca Weiner. Every day, she meets with more than a dozen intelligence officers from around the world.
Because of the international partners that you work with, I wonder if you had any heads up that this was happening, or did you learn like everyone else this morning?
I think we've all been reading the tea leaves over the last several weeks about what could transpire, and that gave us opportunity to make sure that we're leaning into all of our partners, all of our intelligence resources.
Does the threat level increase now that we know the Supreme Leader has been killed?
The threat level increases whenever there's a conflict like what's happening in the broader Middle East, regardless of a leader being killed or not. Our response is to focus on New York City and what the risk is to our city.
What would you tell folks who are nervous, who are genuinely concerned about the safety of not only New Yorkers, but this country?
We deploy all these resources so that New Yorkers can go about their days knowing that we have the resources, we have the partnerships, and we have the intelligence in play to keep our city safe.
And when it comes to those reported sleeper cells, Deputy Commissioner Weiner would not go as far as to say they are tracking them, but she did say they are leaning into any tips and any leads. Tony?
Jerika, thank you very much, and we'll be back with you in a moment on another topic, so stick right there. Meantime, a more in-depth look at threats here in the homeland. I want to bring in CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. She served as former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism at the Department of Homeland Security. Sam, thank you very much for joining us. So the Department of Homeland Security is saying it's unlikely that large-scale physical attacks will happen here in the U.S. However, they say Iran could launch more targeted physical attacks, smaller scale, and that cyber attacks are possible. What are we looking at?
Well, what we're looking at is the fact that for the past several decades, the Iranian regime has seriously invested in surrogate networks in the United States and around the world. Those surrogate networks have been successful in trying to launch assassination attempts against government officials, dissidents, members of the Jewish community, and others. And so for that reason, in my experience, Tony, the federal, state, and local government officials at any given time have a serious amount of ongoing investigations into Iranian-backed criminal and counterterrorism-related threats. Certainly, after the assassination of the Supreme Leader and the ongoing kinetic conflict in the Middle East, the ability for the regime to try to tap into those surrogate networks to try to retaliate for what's happening is even higher. And that's why we are seeing really unprecedented cooperation between all levels of government and probably the private sector to try to share information, increase intelligence gathering, intelligence analysis, and to deter attacks by putting out more physical patrols, more visible law enforcement, and other matters.
Sam, how credible, how imminent are the potential attacks, the threats against the Jewish community, the U.S. government officials, the U.S. military community? What do you know at this hour?
What I can say is the Iranians have come pretty close in the past. And really, I've worked closely with the NYPD and others. We have a really incredible law enforcement intelligence community in this country. But the Iranian regime is quite sophisticated and good at what it does. I am not a huge fan of saying there's no credible or imminent threat, because that can change very, very quickly for something to go to non-credible and to become imminent. Instead, I think it's important that members of the public remain on heightened alert, that if you see something, say something. And when it comes to cyber hygiene, when it comes to emails and links and files that you're getting right now, that everybody stay on high alert to the environment around them while all of this is ongoing.
All right, Sam Vinograd, thank you very much. Another concern on Americans' minds is the potential economic impact this strike will have on oil and gas prices here at home. I want to go back to Jerika, as promised. Thank you very much for sticking around. What's going to happen to oil and gas prices?
Yeah, so we've been looking into this, and essentially, you know that the oil is traded on a global market. Because oil trades on that market, any disruption to the supply can spike oil prices worldwide. Now, the bigger concern may be access to the Strait of Hormuz, a key area used to carry roughly 20% of the world's oil. How these oil markets react will depend on how long this conflict lasts. Bottom line, Tony, if crude oil jumps significantly, drivers in the U.S. could see prices go up within a matter of days.
We'll be monitoring it closely. Jerika, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Coming up, cheering in the streets in Iran, we're going to speak with an Iranian dissident living in exile here in the U.S. who has been dreaming of this moment for years. You're watching CBS News. You are watching a CBS News live special, War with Iran, and we bring you live pictures of mourners already lining up for the funeral of their supreme leader, which will take place on Sunday in Iran. These are pictures from Iranian state television. While there are people mourning, there are also plenty of Iranians celebrating at this hour. And with us now is CBS News contributor and Iranian-American journalist Masih Alinejad, who has survived not one, not two, but three plots by Iran's regime to kill or kidnap her. Masih, thank you very much for being here. It sounds like you've lost your voice a little bit. Is that related to today's events?
I have been singing, shouting, screaming, celebrating with my people inside Iran. I was talking to mothers. Ibrahim Kitabdar's mothers, Peshman's mothers, Puya's mother. These are the mothers that they lost their children. And I hear their voices that they are celebrating the killing of the murderers, Ali Khamenei. So that's why I lost my voice. But don't worry, when I need it to come back to me.
I see the celebrations. I can sense the joy in the streets. Is there apprehension about what comes next?
You know, of course, people are worried. But this is the time that my people, Iranians, they are experiencing pain and hope. Because I'm talking about the regime that massacred more than 40,000 people. But in the street, people are just screaming out of joy because they believe this is going to be the beginning of a future that we don't have killers in power, a future that people can have a normal life. You know, for many of Americans watching me, maybe this is about a country miles away from America. They say that this is the story of people that we don't maybe know them. But for me, this is my life story. I was put in prison when I was only 19 years old. I was pregnant. This is the regime. Think about it. They have stolen my life. They have stolen my family, my country, everything.
Are you hearing talk of anyone in particular who might be able, from Iranian civil society, to step forward, not part of the regime, not part of the revolution, on a whole nother track, and be the leader that I think people like yourself are looking for in Iran?
This regime cannot be reformed. So definitely we're not looking, oh my God, I lost my voice.
It's understandable.
We're not looking for anyone from this regime. And people in the street, they're naming Prince Pahlavi. And he says that he believes in fair and free election. I believe that we deserve to have a transition from this government to this regime, to a secular democracy. I'm not a political leader, but I believe that Iranian can have a government by voting, having fair and free election. So that's why I'm calling on Europeans. This is the Berlin Wall moment to meet with the opposition, to think about an Iran without the Islamic Republic. Because this is a regime sending killers in the region, in America, in Europe, everywhere. So there is only one solution to end the war, endless war, to end the root cause of the war, which is the Islamic Republic.
But in the Berlin Wall moment, the wall came down and the Guard stood down. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard is not standing down. What happens next?
I think because they don't see strong signal. As soon as they see signal from the European leaders all over the world, you know, Arab leaders, where are they? If there is think about it, a political coalition in Iran And outside Iran, like the Europeans, Americans, leaders from Arab countries, if they get all united, having a plan, a strategic plan to see an Iran without Islamic Republic, that will send a signal to the Revolution Guards members to put their guns down. I think we need to see this signal.
10:54 here in the East. How do you think future generations will look back at this moment?
Oh my God, I can't talk. I lost my voice. You have to bring me back tomorrow. I need some hot water.
All right, let's get the ladies some hot water. Masih Alinejad, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
I will invite you to my beautiful country. I want to hug my family. It has been 15 years. That's why I get really upset when I see some anti-war Americans taking to the streets, my fellow citizens, take to the street to celebrate the killing of a terrorist. Because this is not about politics. This is all about normal life, having dignity for Iranians. We share the same values. You want these terrorists? Don't feel sorry for terrorists. Feel sorry for my people inside Iran. The new generation, they deserve to have democracy. It breaks my heart when I see Americans in the streets. They chant, I am Hamas. Hamas is killing Iranians, killing people in Gaza. If you care about free Palestine, help us to free Palestine from Islamic Republic. I want to talk to Americans, but I will be back tomorrow.
All right, Masih Alinejad, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to a CBS News primetime special, War with Iran. We are nearly 24 hours now into a whole new world, and none of us knows exactly where this is headed. But here's where we are. In a surprise attack this morning, the United States and Israel launched a massive aerial assault on Iran, decapitating its leadership and, in perhaps the most notable development of all, killing that country's supreme leader. For more than 45 years, Iran has been an iron-fisted theocracy, ruled by leaders who turned a country where women worked and dressed as they pleased into a religious dictatorship that crushed dissent and killed thousands of its own people in just the past couple of months alone. Even as Iran retaliates tonight, that era of repression may be over. There are no reports of American casualties at this hour from Iranian airstrikes. There are, however, celebrations in the streets of Tehran. President Trump told the Iranian people, take control of your government. That, quote, the hour of their freedom is at hand. We'll be watching out for it, and we shall see.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We begin with confirmation of the first American casualties since the U.S. and Israel launched attacks on Iran. 3 service members have been killed, at least 5 others wounded. Today, President Trump addressed those losses in a new video.
As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation.
And a new wave of deadly strikes today from the U.S. and Israel. But the country of more than 90 million people is not backing down. They're even launching missiles toward neighbors that host U.S. military bases. All of that, and President Trump says he's still open to talks with Iran's new leadership. CBS's Charlie D'Agata is in Tel Aviv, where he has been in and out of bomb shelters all day. Charlie, good evening.
Good evening, Tarika. So CBS News has learned that those 3 U.S. service members killed were among American personnel based in Kuwait. As you said, another 5 were seriously wounded. These are the first American deaths since the joint U.S.-Israel campaign dubbed Operation Epic Fury began. Day 2 of the war, and the aerial battle between both sides has intensified by the hour. In Iran's capital city, Tehran, explosions rang out. Eyewitnesses claiming Israeli missiles had hit a hospital a day after Iranian state media said more than 100 were killed at an elementary school. Some Iranians cheered in the streets at the news of the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But today, thousands of pro-regime demonstrators gathered instead, a day of anger that became an evening of mourning, the start of 40 days for their supreme leader. Israel Defense Forces released this video today, saying it shows a regime headquarters leveled with multiple missile strikes, one of hundreds of targets they struck. IDF spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani told us how swiftly that operation unfolded.
A coordinated attack on multiple locations, decapitating the Iranian leadership.
Simultaneously?
Yes.
Including Ayatollah Khamenei?
Khamenei was part of those who were eliminated in the first minute of the operation.
The first minute of the operation?
We had real-time intelligence about a gathering.
The Iranian military has vowed revenge, striking back. A missile hitting the shelter of a synagogue west of Jerusalem, killing at least 9. While last night, a residential neighborhood in downtown Tel Aviv was shattered by a strike that left 1 woman dead and dozens injured. Today, an Israeli Air Force official told CBS News they believe forces have been successful in intercepting 90% of incoming missiles and drones fired into Israel. President Trump said he will avenge the deaths of the 3 U.S. service members and said that combat operations in Iran will not only continue, they're actually going ahead of schedule.
And today, as Charlie and many others in Israel took cover as air raid sirens rang out after Tehran vowed revenge for the killing of its supreme leader. Israel said its Iron Dome defense system blocked dozens of incoming missiles, but not all of them. CBS's MTS Tayeb reports from the Gulf of Oman.
Oh my God. The powerful Iranian strikes have shattered Dubai's image as a luxurious safe haven of glittering hotels and high-end resorts. So too have the thick plumes of smoke that choke the skies above the Qatari capital Doha, known for its opulence and calm. The Kingdom of Bahrain also wasn't spared. Neither was Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, or Oman, where tankers were struck just off its shores in the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global shipping route where 1/5 of the world's oil passes through. In all, dozens of people have been injured and at least 4 killed in the Iranian attacks on the Gulf that have largely grounded flights and shut down commerce in the region. Tehran's decision to fire volleys of missiles and drones at the group of countries that make up the Gulf has only upped the ante. Most countries here host large U.S. military bases, housing tens of thousands of American service members, including the headquarters of the Navy's 5th Fleet in Bahrain, which was struck on Saturday. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has threatened his country's armed forces will, quote, crush the U.S. bases with force. And while most Iranian drones and missiles have been intercepted and no Gulf nation has fired back, the question now is, for how long? Fears of a sustained conflict expanding beyond Iran's borders have only grown following the killing of the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. In Pakistan, pro-regime demonstrators attempted to storm the U.S. consulate in Karachi. At least 20 people were killed. Protests have also erupted in Iraq, where hundreds were pushed away from the Green Zone in Baghdad with water cannons just a short distance from the American embassy.
Now, sources inside Iran tell CBS News the regime's apparent strategy of carrying out attacks on Gulf countries is likely part of a risky effort to try and shorten the war, since the ongoing missile and drone strikes could see Arab leaders try to pressure the U.S. and Israel to end their campaign early, Jerika, an apparent gamble which so far has not paid off.
In Washington, lawmakers are deeply divided over the strikes against Iran, some emphasizing that only Congress has the power to declare war. Before leaving Florida today, President Trump said there would be no immediate end to the fighting. CBS's Willie James Enman has more on the president's comments. Good evening, Willie James.
Jerika, good evening to you. In that new video President Trump posted today, he commended the service members who lost their lives. The president also giving a timeline for Operation Epic Fury in an interview, saying it's always been a 4-week process.
America will avenge their deaths.
President Trump is speaking out after the deaths of 3 American service members during Operation Epic Fury.
Sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case.
He defended the actions as right and necessary and said they would be ongoing.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
On Face the Nation, Republican Senator Tom Cotton said he also expected strikes would continue, but said U.S. boots on the ground are unlikely.
The president has no plan for any kind of large-scale ground force inside of Iran.
Senior Trump administration officials told reporters on Saturday Iran intended to use ballistic missiles against the U.S. and its allies in the region. But Democratic lawmakers are demanding answers, questioning if Iran posed an immediate threat to the U.S. and why the president didn't get congressional authorization.
This is a disaster. It is illegal. And the president is obligated under the Constitution to come to Congress and ask for an authorization of military force.
Members of Congress are scheduled to receive briefings on the Iran operation this week.
We have had very little visibility into what happens next after the supreme leader is eliminated. I think we still don't know what is happening next.
Now, it's unclear if or when talks between the U.S. and Iran could restart, but over the weekend, the president posting on social media warning the nation against retaliation. Tarika.
Willie James Enman, thank you. Tonight, Iran faces a risky transition with the killing of its supreme leader, his death leaving a power vacuum atop the regime. CBS's Matt Gutman in Amman, Jordan, has more on that. Matt?
Jarika, good evening. We're right under the flight path of those Iranian missiles here in Jordan. We've been watching them streak across the night sky. Those missiles fired by Iran in retaliation. And for the first time today, state media announcing the death of Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for the past 37 years. The Islamic Republic now marking 40 days of mourning for the Ayatollah, and also wiped out top military and political leadership, at least 40 people, according to Israel. A succession plan was put in place months ago, but I'm told the gears of the bureaucracy and much of the military and the secret police are still in place. Analysts tell me that for the regime, merely absorbing these airstrikes and surviving against threats, both internal and external, will be considered a kind of victory. And it's one reason that Israeli military officials tell me that they are hoping to accelerate their attacks against the regime to try to topple it before President Trump decides perhaps to pause those strikes and re-engage in talks with whatever is left of Iran's leadership. Tarika.
Yeah, so much uncertainty. Matt Gutman, thank you. This weekend, nearly all the airspace in the Middle East is closed or severely restricted. That's left many travelers, including Americans, forced to find another way home. CBS's Chanel Call spoke to some of them.
Dubai, one of the busiest travel hubs in the world, targeted by an Iranian strike. Flights throughout the region grounded and passengers forced to evacuate. Chicago DJ Mixu Patel planned to lay over in nearby Abu Dhabi on his way to India.
Once I got to my gate, they're like, all the flights are suspended because every single person got an emergency message saying, hey, there's a possible missile strike. So if you want to, cover yourself, stay away from windows.
And so, how are you, as an American, sort of processing this?
I'm usually used to seeing flood warnings or tornado warnings, but I saw that warning as a missile strike. That did scare me inside. I'm like, holy cow, it's about to go down.
A drone attack also damaged the Kuwait airport. The escalation forcing Doha, Qatar, and Israel to shut their airspace. This group of Baptist pastors from the U.S. visiting Israel on a Bible study spent the weekend in and out of bomb shelters.
We are essentially stuck.
We spoke with Pastor Wes Church from Columbia, South Carolina.
What are you going to do next?
Well, the concern is how long is it going to be before the Tel Aviv Ben Gurion Airport opens up? So we have come south because from here we can get across the border into Egypt or across the border into Jordan.
Americans like Church now forced to take matters into their own hands if they want to get home soon.
The adrenaline rush of what to do, where to go, what's about to happen, who do we tell, are we going to the right place, how much time do we have?
The U.S. Embassy in Israel announcing it will close tomorrow. The State Department now advising all Americans stuck abroad to have their own departure plans in place and not rely on the government for help. Jerika?
Chanel Call, thank you.
And good evening from a region at war tonight. The latest sign just moments ago as we saw missiles streak across the sky behind me, appearing to head from Iran toward Israel. And earlier this evening, the U.S. Embassy very close to us here in Amman, Jordan, was evacuated because of an unnamed threat. All of it coming as the State Department is urging Americans in 14 different countries to get out now. And all of it part of a long-feared battle that exploded over the weekend. For 3 days now, missiles have been flying overhead with Iran's counterattacks landing in countries throughout the Gulf, hoping to pressure the U.S. and Israel to slow their assault. But with more U.S. soldiers headed to the region tonight, President Trump is saying the biggest wave of fighting is yet to come. We have a team of correspondents across the Middle East and at the White House covering every angle of this, including possible threats back home. But first, what we know about the war right now. For a third day now, U.S. and Israeli forces are pounding Iran, striking more than 1,000 targets across the country since Saturday, including key government and military buildings in the capital.
We have the strongest and most powerful by far military in the world, and we will easily prevail.
But President Trump warning this fight could last a month or more, not ruling out a U.S. ground operation before it's over. The question tonight, though, what's the end game and who will take over in Iran after more than 40 of the country's most senior leaders were killed in the first minutes of the war? For now, the regime's military fighting back hard, firing missiles and launching drones at least 11 countries, among them Israel and Kuwait, where an Iranian weapon tore through a U.S. operations center, killing 6 American troops. 3 U.S. F-15 fighter jets shot down by Kuwait in what's been described as a friendly fire incident. All 6 aircrew ejected safely, this pilot even appearing to smile as she brushed herself off. Commercial flights in the region, meanwhile, have become near non-existent. Thousands stranded, among them U.S. citizens.
They sent massive alerts on everyone's phones, those alerts you get, saying shelter in place, incoming missiles may be coming, stay away from windows. And that was the most jarring thing.
And jarring is a good description for what a lot of people are experiencing across this entire region. Let's go to Chief Correspondent Matt Gutman. He's in Tel Aviv, Israel for us tonight, where air raid sirens have been going off. Matt, good evening.
And Tony, good evening. What we're seeing is arguably the largest ever conflict in the Middle East, with 11 countries that have been hit by Iranian missiles or drones. That, as Israeli officials tell me, that they believe that Iran still has about 2,500 ballistic missiles, which the U.S. and Israel are systematically working to destroy.
Explosions and columns of smoke and fire across Iran. Evidence of an unrelenting campaign by the U.S. and Israel, now in its 3rd devastating day. The initial assault Saturday morning was quick and deadly, taking out Iran's leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and dozens of senior officials. It was followed by constant waves of strikes coming from U.S. fighter jets taking off from aircraft carriers and Tomahawk cruise missiles, degrading Iran's ability to launch ballistic missiles. But over 500 people have been killed, according to the Red Crescent, including at a girls' elementary school, where Iranian state media claimed more than 100 children were killed. Iran lashing out across the Middle East. Several U.S. military facilities in the region have already been hit, including in Kuwait, where 6 U.S. service members were killed over the weekend. Today, President Trump honored them.
In their memory, we continue this mission with ferocious, unyielding resolve to crush the threat this terrorist regime poses to the American people.
Iran also indiscriminately targeting civilian sites.
Oh my God.
A hotel in Dubai, this apartment building in Bahrain, and in Israel, a direct hit near Jerusalem. This neighborhood leveled.
It pulverized the concrete into something like this, but among the effects, you can see combs, Pokemon cards, and family pictures.
Dozens were wounded and 9 were killed in the attack. including a mother and her son buried together today.
I see the mother and the baby on the floor. She's doing like this, and the little boy, a lot of blood in his face. He's 4 years old.
And despite those sirens tonight, Tony, we have seen notably fewer missile barrages today. And Israeli officials tell me there are likely two reasons for that. First, they have destroyed most of those missile launchers in Iran, about half of them so far. But also, Iran has been listening to President Trump talk about a 4 or 5 week war, and they are conserving their stockpiles. Tony.
President Trump has said this war is about making the world safer by, among other things, eliminating the threat of an Iranian nuclear program. And tonight we're getting a fuller picture of what the U.S. and Israel have accomplished so far. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata is in Tel Aviv also with more on this. Charlie, good evening.
Good evening to you, Tony. So the air campaign we're seeing is being described as the most intense since the first Gulf War over 3 decades ago. And the Pentagon said today the U.S. is surging more forces to the region. The U.S. and Israeli militaries have carried out more than 1,000 strikes in the last 3 days, including army bases, warships, and missile launchers.
We're hitting them surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically.
But 3 F-15s were also shot down. Friendly fire by Kuwaiti air defense systems spiraling out of control in the skies above Kuwait. U.S. officials say all 6 crews survived without serious injuries. One seen recovering in the back of a car, another walked away. The most high-profile target of the campaign taken out Saturday, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
As dawn crept up across the Central Command AOR, the skies surged to life. More than 100 aircraft launched from land, sea, fighters, tankers, airborne early warning, electronic attack, bombers from the states, and unmanned platforms, forming a single synchronized wave. This was a daylight strike based on a trigger event conducted by the Israeli Defense Forces, enabled by the U.S. intelligence community.
The Financial Times reported Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, hacked into Tehran's traffic cameras to watch the movements of the supreme leader. CBS News has learned the CIA was also watching and had been following Khamenei until he appeared at a meeting with advisors Saturday morning. It would be his last. Secretary Hegseth gave no indication of an exit plan and didn't rule out putting U.S. boots on the ground. But there are also questions about how long the U.S. can sustain this assault, as there's no endless supply of munitions.
Another wild card in this war is American politics. Many Democrats, some Republicans, and a huge majority of everyday Americans, according to polls, do not agree with this weekend's surprise strikes on Iran. Nancy Cordes has the latest from the White House.
I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this.
Speaking from the East Room of the White House, President Trump said he will wage this war until the U.S. destroys Iran's missile program, terminates its nuclear ambitions, and annihilates Iran's navy.
We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea.
How long will all that take? The timeline has evolved. On Saturday, Trump said he might end the strikes in 2 or 3 days. Today, he said the plan was always to attack for 4 to 5 weeks.
But we have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it.
Trump has made no secret of his desire for regime change in Iran.
Take over your government. It will be yours to take.
But the question of who should lead Iran next has been trickier to answer. On Sunday, Trump told one news outlet he had 3 very good choices in mind. But then he told another outlet it's not going to be anybody that we were thinking of, because they are all dead.
He has no strategy. He has no end game.
In a closed-door briefing this afternoon, lawmakers had questions for Secretary of State Marco Rubio about the timing and rationale for war.
This operation needed to happen because Iran in about a year or a year and a half would cross the line of immunity, meaning they would have so many short-range missiles, so many drones, that no one could do anything about it.
Both Rubio and the president warned today that the fiercest bombing hasn't even started yet. Rubio said the next phase will be even more punishing for Iran's military and its leadership. Tony?
We're back now from Amman, Jordan. Oil prices rose by about 7% today, and gasoline prices surely will follow. Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is here to explain what the war with Iran could mean for your wallet. Kelly?
Tony, pain at the pump could be one major way Americans feel this war at home, and that stems from rising oil prices. Remember, oil is traded on the open market. When supply goes down, prices go up. Two primary ways that supply is being affected: the transportation and the production of oil. On the transport side, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has ground to a halt. The narrow choke point sees 20% of the world's oil and natural gas supply pass through every year. Already, Iran is targeting ships, and some companies are choosing to avoid the strait altogether. Now, energy infrastructure in the region is also being targeted. An oil refinery in Saudi Arabia was struck. Qatar is pausing its natural gas production, and sources are telling us fields across the Middle East are shut down. Now, in an extreme scenario, oil could reach above $100 per barrel, but consumers wouldn't see an impact overnight. For every $1 increase in oil prices, that translates to roughly 2.5 cents at the pump. It's a slow creep. And it's not just gas prices, but inflation overall that's a concern. Why? Trucks run on diesel, and when those prices go up, so does everything we buy. The situation is dynamic, though, and prices could drop just as quickly as they rise. Tony?
Good evening from one of the many cities in this region under fire tonight. The war accelerating on multiple fronts as we come on the air. The U.S. and Israel launching ferocious new attacks today on Iran to our east, even as President Trump says, quote, just about everything's been knocked out there. And yet Iran still hitting back. Again today, Iranian missiles rained down on U.S. allies across the Gulf and right here in Israel. The sirens repeatedly warning us to take cover. And the U.S. confirming a drone attack just hours ago sparked a fire near the U.S. consulate in Dubai, with all staff accounted for, we can say. Overnight, though, one of Iran's most successful strikes yet, a direct hit on the U.S. embassy in Riyadh, setting fire to the building and forcing additional U.S. embassy closures in Lebanon and Kuwait. Also tonight, we're learning the names of some of those American service members killed in what the Defense Department reports was a drone attack earlier this week in Kuwait. The soldiers from across the U.S. were assigned to the 103rd Sustainment Command in Des Moines, Iowa. The oldest, 42, the youngest, just 20 years old. Meanwhile, in the oil-critical Strait of Hormuz, shipping traffic is near zero tonight after the Iranian Revolutionary Guard threatened to firebomb any ships who tried to pass. We have a team of correspondents on every angle of this again tonight, including the rising civilian death toll and the politics of it all in Washington. But we begin with the fighting today, everything we know about the war right now. Simultaneous attacks ripped through the Iranian capital today and shocked Lebanon. The IDF launching direct strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs. As a new ground operation there battles Hezbollah's campaign of revenge after the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Since Saturday, the U.S. alone has taken out more than 1,700 targets, according to U.S. Central Command, among them this military academy. And the IDF hitting the building where Iran's assembly of experts would have been expected to gather to appoint the next supreme leader. President Trump today saying Iran was all but beaten.
They have no Navy, it's been knocked out. They have no Air Force, it's been knocked out. They have no air detection, that's been knocked out. Their radar has been knocked out. And just about everything's been knocked out.
Including, it seems, the Natanz nuclear facility, showing fresh damage in these newly released satellite photos. And just a day after Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said the Iranians had boasted about having enough enriched uranium for 11 nuclear weapons. Also tonight, we're learning more about how 6 U.S. service members were killed in an Iranian drone strike in Kuwait. While Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said the location was fortified, 3 U.S. military officials questioned that assessment, telling CBS all 6 were in a makeshift tactical operations space, protected against explosions, rocket attacks, and shrapnel, but not aerial strikes of the kind that killed them. Meanwhile, on the streets of Tel Aviv tonight, we saw residents still picking through what's left days after an Iranian strike. Anything special you're looking for?
Photos from my family.
This woman told us she's looking for anything that feels like home.
I'm trying to save anything small, especially the memories, because there is nothing left to take. Everything is broken.
And not far away, we noticed 9-year-old Zohar peering in at the damage with his grandfather. You heard the explosion?
Yes, we are living there.
Do you ever get scared?
Yes.
What do you do to feel better?
Smile. Smile to me and I smile to him.
And we spoke to one other resident there who you might say was searching for a smile as well, and he found one. He found his children's toys, which he thought might have been lost in the blast. But let's bring in our chief correspondent, Matt Gutman, because you talk about civilians. For many, it's a desperate effort to get out of here.
Yeah. And you and I, Tony, were out here about an hour ago watching as U.S. warships fired Tomahawk missiles over our head. We saw Iranian missiles coming in. There are warplanes crisscrossing the sky. But what is not flying are commercial airliners, meaning that millions of people are stranded in this conflict zone.
As the U.S., Israel, and Iran trade attacks, millions of civilians across the Middle East find themselves caught in the crossfire. In Iran, the Red Crescent says nearly 800 have died in 4 days of bombings. And today, in the city of Minab, a mass funeral was held for what the regime claims were girls killed in an elementary school. Rows of graves seen awaiting coffins.
I don't think war is inevitable.
IDF spokesman Nadav Shoshani denied Israel is responsible.
We're doing everything we can to be as accurate as we can and making sure that we are not targeting the Iranian civilians because we're not at war with them.
This comes as the U.S. State Department is telling the roughly 1 million American citizens in 14 countries to leave immediately and says help is on the way.
It's going to take a little time because we don't control the airspace closures. That said, there may be more people out there that need help. We need to know who you are.
But with most planes grounded, many are finding escape nearly impossible. Kat Spitzer is stuck in Dubai.
Everybody is scared. We don't want to be forgotten. We just want any way to get out.
This has been the wildest trip of my life.
American Tamar Rubenstein is pregnant with twins. She's taking a bus from Israel to Egypt, then flying to Athens, and then Munich, and then to Chicago. It'll take her 2.5 days.
Why not just wait until the missiles end and stay in a safe place?
There's such a lack of clarity, so I didn't want to get to the point where I wouldn't be cleared to travel anymore.
That's a tough road. Now, Secretary Rubio has said that the U.S. is now chartering planes to try to bring Americans home. But, Tony, so many of those travelers that we spoke to said that the State Department just hasn't moved fast enough to help them.
You can understand their frustration. Matt, thank you very much. About 1,400 miles southeast of Israel is the Gulf nation of Qatar, which has served as a mediator in negotiations between the U.S. and Iran in the lead-up to this conflict. Qatar also hosts a large U.S. military base, in fact, the largest in the Middle East. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayyab is there. Imtiaz, good evening.
Tony, good evening to you. Well, in what could mark a major escalation, Gulf nations, including here in Qatar, are weighing whether to join the U.S. and Israel and strike Iran themselves after accusing Tehran of, quote, reckless and indiscriminate attacks on their countries.
Tonight, an Iranian drone struck the grounds of a U.S. consulate in Dubai, setting it ablaze. There are no reports of casualties, but it's part of a punishing campaign by Tehran that has seen the United Arab Emirates targeted more than any other nation in the Gulf. The UAE's Ministry of Defense released this video showing its air defenses intercepting one of 186 Iranian missiles fired at the country. Most were shot out of the sky. But the damage to hotels and residences has been extensive. And at least 3 people have been killed and nearly 70 injured. The Gulf state's military spokesman, Major General Abdul Nasser al-Hamadi, has said the state will repel any aggression against it. Qatar says it's been targeted by more than 100 ballistic missiles and at least 39 drones. Some strikes shot down one of its main liquefied natural gas plants, the lifeblood of its economy and spiking prices globally. Majid al-Ansari, the foreign ministry spokesman, was blunt.
The attacks
like this will not go unanswered.
Qatar says it's already shot down at least 2 Iranian bombers while denying reports it has struck inside Iran. Now it and the UAE join Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, and Bahrain facing a stark choice: absorb Iranian strikes or join the U.S. and Israel to hit back.
And tonight, Qatar has announced the arrest of what it said are 2 cells operating here in Doha for Iran's Revolutionary Guard, potentially raising the stakes even further for further confrontation with Tehran. Tony.
To Washington now, where the Senate is expected to vote tomorrow on a series of Democrat-backed war powers resolutions. These are aimed at stopping this conflict and preventing future wars that don't have a green light from Congress. Here's CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes with more reaction from Democrats tonight.
If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first.
President Trump insisted today it was him and not Israeli leaders who chose to launch this war this past weekend.
If anything, I might have forced Israel's hand.
That seemed to contradict what his Secretary of State said just yesterday.
Obviously, we were aware of Israeli intentions.
Marco Rubio said the U.S. had to strike when it did because Israel was planning its own offensive.
We knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us.
Democrats were quick to seize on the latest mixed message.
They can't make up their mind why they took the action they did, and so you get a different story every hour.
As the war heads into its 5th day, the partisan battle is heating up too. Trump says he has all the munitions he needs.
We have really an unlimited supply.
Democrats say that's not the case.
There is a potential desperate and disastrous shortage of THAAD and Patriot systems.
Trump says there was no time to craft an evacuation plan for Americans in the region.
Well, because it happened all very quickly.
Democrats say it didn't have to happen quickly.
There is no evidence that has been presented to us that the United States was under threat of imminent attack from Iran. Zero evidence of that.
Trump was asked today what he views as the worst case scenario here, and he said the worst outcome would be if he wages this war only to find that Iran's next leader ends up being as repressive as the last one. That's a concern he shares with members from both sides, Tony.
And thank you for joining us on a very busy Wednesday night. Another day of missiles and drones crisscrossing the skies of the Middle East as Iran widens its ring of retaliatory fire tonight, threatening to draw our European allies into an escalating fight. A U.S. warship in the Mediterranean shot down an Iranian missile headed for Turkey, which is a member of NATO. And an attack on one NATO member has the potential to trigger a mutual defense pact that brings others into the fight. And the list of nations involved is already a long one. Since Saturday, at least 11 different countries have fended off hundreds of airborne assaults from Iran, suffering dozens of direct hits, including hotels, airports, and embassies. Tonight, the number of U.S. embassies now closed or suspending operations is at 7 in all. And for a 5th day now, commercial air travel is virtually impossible in this region, leaving thousands stranded, often running for shelter while driving up oil and gas prices worldwide. We have it all covered for you once again tonight with our team of correspondents, including the latest on U.S. evacuation efforts, impacts on the global economy, and new details about what led to the death of those 6 U.S. soldiers in Bahrain. But we begin, as we have nightly, with everything we know about the war right now. As fast as Iran can clean up debris from the last strike, there's a new one. As the U.S. and Israel say, they are carving up the country, dividing targets by region, and producing what the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth today described as death and destruction from the sky all day long.
We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly.
The U.S. said it had struck or sunk to the bottom of the ocean more than 20 Iranian naval vessels, among them this one off the coast of Sri Lanka. Footage released just hours ago showing the moment of impact. A single torpedo launched from an American submarine, the first such sinking of an enemy ship since World War II. Meanwhile, in the skies over Iran, the IDF says an Israeli F-35, in another first, took out an Iranian warplane, as other Israeli jets took aim at Iranian police stations, detention centers, and other parts of its internal police state. The latest sign that the U.S. and Israel hope that what bombs can't do from above, the Iranian people will do from the ground. Effie Defrin is an IDF brigadier general.
We don't have aim to change the regime as military, but we want to shake this horrible terror regime.
The strikes on Iran were so intense that state television announced it would postpone funeral ceremonies for the supreme leader. And Israel warned that a successor with the same ideology as the Ayatollah would also be a, quote, unequivocal target for elimination. Nearly 800 people in Iran have died so far in the U.S. Israeli strikes, according to the Iranian Red Crescent. But Iran's leaders pledged to continue fighting, launching fresh strikes on Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar, including the largest U.S. base in the region there. Iran and its allies in Lebanon deployed a coordinated barrage at Israel today, triggering sirens throughout the country. Israel, for its part, deepened its counter-assault on Hezbollah in Lebanon, telling residents part of the country to leave immediately. And with Americans trapped in the region, the U.S. government announced plans to evacuate U.S. nationals from multiple countries.
We should not be at this war. I believe it's wrong.
In Washington, Democrats and some Republicans denounced what they fear will be another costly American operation in the Middle East.
How do you avoid this becoming a grinding, long-term death trap for both Israel and America?
Well, again, let me start by explaining that, Iran is posing a threat not only for Israel, the region, it's also the entire world.
But the reason I ask this question in this way is because from an American perspective, we look at wars in the Middle East and we think of Iraq and Afghanistan. It becomes a quagmire, a swamp where people go, die, and nothing changes. How do you avoid that here?
I totally understand you. Iran is producing missiles. They already hit Cyprus. They have American blood on their hands. They are a problem of the world.
Another big part of this story tonight, the struggle to get American citizens out of the war zone. Thousands have made it out since the weekend, but many others are still struck. So let's bring in Chief Correspondent Matt Gutman. What's going on here, Matt?
So there are about 1 million American citizens across the Middle East right now, many of them finding zero way out. Now, not everybody is trying to leave, but those who are, it has become clear, are not getting much help from their government. As the U.S. and Israel conduct their war against Iran, the Trump administration finds itself tonight waging another battle, facing criticism over Americans stranded in the conflict zone.
The State Department has been very clear to the American people traveling within this region not to travel to these regions.
The State Department says it has helped 6,500 U.S. citizens leave. Another 10,000 got out on their own. And charter flights are being organized, but it's unclear if any have arrived yet. The Netherlands, Spain, and Bulgaria have mustered repatriation flights. Among those stuck in Israel, Todd and Lisa Eggleston from Las Vegas, arriving 2 days before the war broke out.
All of a sudden, this loud siren goes off on my phone. It's just scared us to death, and I look down on it, and it's like, you need to seek shelter.
They've had little sleep, running in and out of bomb shelters every night.
You've been actually sleeping in your clothes every night.
Yeah, I mean, not our shoes, though, just our clothes, yeah.
Like many in the region, the Egglestons sought help from the U.S. government, but automated messages told them they were essentially on their own.
You sit on hold, lets you sit on hold for about 10 minutes, and then it hangs up.
Tonight, the White House is insisting it's solved the problem.
Well, the line was updated, and I expect every single person in this room to report on that accurately.
We called that helpline over a dozen times.
And it hung up. So that's the second time in a row. This happens virtually every time you call. It goes to that automated message and then disconnects. And while the Egglestons are being patient, They just want to get home.
We know that they've gotten some people out of some other countries, and we understand all that. I just don't want to be here for 3 weeks, and we will seek other means to get out if it gets to that point.
So the Ecclestons were able to rebook a flight on Delta, but for March 24th. And now with the administration saying that this war could last 8 weeks, Tony, you can be sure that those flights will also be canceled, meaning that tourists across the region will be forced to eat all these additional costs of these prolonged stays.
Those bills get big very fast. Matt, thank you very much. We have new reporting tonight about the attack in Kuwait that killed 6 U.S. soldiers. They were from the 103rd Sustainment Command based in Des Moines, Iowa. Let's bring in our senior national security correspondent, Charlie Daggett. Charlie, good evening.
Good evening, Tony. Matt. Sources tell CBS News that Iranian intelligence had scouted the facility where the drone attack took place and determined it was a soft target. These satellite images confirmed by CBS News show the facility in Kuwait where the soldiers were working before and after the Iranian drone impacted. 4 of the 6 Iowa Army reservists killed in Sunday's strike have been identified, including Sergeant Declan J. Cody from Iowa, the youngest of those named at just 20 years old, a college sophomore. The reality of war being felt by Cody's family.
He was so amazing and kind.
His sister, Kira, paying tribute to a brother coming up on his 21st birthday.
I still don't fully think it's real. I didn't think it was real when they told us.
Defense Secretary Hegseth said the facility in Kuwait was fortified.
It happened to hit a tactical operations center that was fortified.
But sources tell CBS News the facility was a triple-wide trailer made into an office space, had no protection against projectiles coming from above, and lacked the defenses to intercept incoming drones. We basically had no drone defeat capability, one source told us. Today, Secretary Hegseth argued the vast majority of drones are intercepted.
But when a few drones get through, or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality.
The reality is setting in for the Nebraska family of 42-year-old Sergeant First Class Noah Tetjens.
A 10-year-old boy doesn't have his dad. A mom doesn't have her husband. The community is in mourning, but we also lift him up in service to the country.
This week, the defense secretary and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told members of Congress behind closed doors that Iranian drones, like the ones that killed these service members, present a major challenge and air defenses might not be able to intercept them all. Tony?
Charlie, thank you very much. What's happening here in the Middle East is having a worldwide impact. The price of gasoline has jumped up since the start of the war last weekend. For more on that, let's bring in Money Watch correspondent and CBS Saturday Morning co-anchor Kelly O'Grady.
Tony, U.S. consumers are already feeling the impact of the conflict with Iran. In just 1 week, the national average for a gallon of regular is up about 22 cents. And yesterday saw the biggest single-day increase since March 2022. Now, that spike 4 years ago came right after Russia invaded Ukraine. The resulting surge in oil prices helped push gas to a record $5.01. Now, the U.S. is less reliant on foreign oil than we were in 2022, but analysts still warn crude could top $100 a barrel, depending on how long this lasts. Now, a big pressure point, the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of the world's oil and gas moves through that choke point. And those arrows you see, those are ships. And since the conflict began, traffic has ground to a halt as the route turns more dangerous. Now, to help ease fears of attacks on oil tankers, the Trump administration is offering naval escorts and insurance for shippers. Oil markets calmed on that news, while the details of how that will work are hammered out. But another risk, Iranian attacks on energy infrastructure across the region. Production is paused in some places, and that doesn't come back overnight. Tony?
We're back from the Middle East, and across 5 days of coverage now, we've shown you war and all of its terrible consequences. But even at moments like these, of course, other parts of life carry on, refusing to wait for safer times. The Jewish holiday of Purim, for example, which involves cookies and costumes, still went on in Israel, albeit from bomb shelters. Children still got to dress up as superheroes, and in at least a few cases, the wedding still went on. In
fact, across the entire region, life goes on in 1,000 improbable ways. Markets remain open in Kuwait and Iraq. Volunteers are still handing out meals for iftar, the breaking of the daily Ramadan fast. And in Saudi Arabia, the decorations are still up, even if the streets themselves are a lot emptier than normal. And it's not ignorance or denial. Everyone knows the trouble they're in, but by carrying on, they demonstrate their humanity, which is exactly the thing that will get us all out of this.